Good evening. You're looking at a live picture of the Georgia House and Senate. The House still taking up some bills at this hour. The Senate on a brief dinner break. Both legislative bodies today passed the plan creating new Senate district lines, and senators and representatives also agreed on the big budget. Those stories and more are coming up next. Hello, everybody. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Susan Hoffman. Also on tonight's broadcast, we'll take a look at the status of some of this session's high-profile bills. But our top story tonight, Senate reapportionment is approved by both the House and the Senate.
The bill drawing new Senate districts line was passed by both houses today. Final passage in the Senate came after only an hour of debate. Senate reapportionment Chairman Tim Golden urged passage of the redrawn districts.
As I said, it's been a very long, difficult process. Last night, I think we, all day yesterday, rehashed and hashed out this plan thoroughly. I think everyone is aware of what we've done. I will tell you the courts have retained jurisdiction. The D.C. courts have retained jurisdiction over this matter and are awaiting us submitting a plan.
The U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. had sent back the Senate map, citing problems with black voting strengths in 3 districts. Minority Leader Eric Johnson said the Democrats would pay a price for efforts to keep a majority in the Senate. Senator Danny Lee, a Democrat, also disagreed with the map. First, here's Johnson.
And there's going to be a judgment day on November 5th of 2002 where the voters are going to have their say. So whether or not this passes muster in the court or not, you've picked the side you're on, and it ain't the people of Georgia's side. If anybody's district in this room looked like the 29th district does on this renegade map that you voted for yesterday, a majority of you did, I would not vote for this plan. And I think you ought to know that. And if you can't sleep at night thinking about it, that's all right too.
Reapportionment Committee Chairman Tim Golden said that in changing Districts 2, 22, and 26 to comply with the courts, that other districts also had to change.
The fact is there were a domino effect from that made the 16th, for example, move it from the Democratic column to the Republican column. There were changes indeed. Some of the districts, because of the ripple effect, the domino effect, changed it. I want to stress not all of it was moving it to a Democratic column. It moved the 16th, for example, to the Republican column. Let me say, too, that the talk of this plan as if the whole plan was thrown out. First, I will remind you that the House and the congressional plan, which were opposed by the members of this body, some members of this body, was approved. And I'll also say that 53 of the 56 districts under the plan that we passed during the summer and fall was approved as well by this court decision.
Republican efforts to amend the bill redrawing Senate district lines lost. So did Senator Lee's effort to pass a substitute bill. Then the reapportionment bill passed 31-23 and went back to the House. After a lengthy debate there, the new Senate map passed 95-74 and goes to the governor.
In an unusual move, lawmakers set a specific time and date to sine die. It is set for 3 p.m. this Friday, April 12th. Late today, the House passed a resolution agreeing to take off tomorrow and come back Friday morning at 9, finishing up at 3. The resolution is expected to pass the Senate if it hasn't already. House Majority Leader Larry Walker said the time could vary by an hour or so, but not much more. Walker's reason for taking tomorrow off: there are a few highly technical bills, such as predatory lending and natural gas, still in conference committee, and we will cover those committee meetings tomorrow and have a program tomorrow night. We will have our final lawmakers program for the year on Friday at 7 p.m. Expect a wrap-up of all major legislation and comments from key legislators.
The fate of legislation that affects millions of Georgians will be decided on Friday, the final day of the 2002 General Assembly. The Senate approved a substitute natural gas bill just before midnight last night, sending House Bill 1568 back to the House with changes today. Reporter Hamilton Northcutt joins us live to pick up the story from there. Hamilton.
The Senate added 2 pages of revisions to the Natural Gas Consumers Relief Act. This legislation includes protection for customers whose gas provider is changed without their permission.
A firm stand against slamming, financial relief for customers when a marketer or distributor make a mistake, requiring the large interruptible service customers to pay for the first time their fair share of distribution costs, instead of forcing the small business and the homeowners to shoulder this gigantic financial burden.
After looking over the Senate's changes, Governor Barnes, floor leader in the House, decided the natural gas bill needed more fine-tuning.
There were some changes, there were some fines, and there were some other terms in there that I thought we really needed to look at carefully before we give final approval to the bill, so I moved that we disagree. There was no objection. The bill's been sent back to the Senate. The next point, I assume, will be that they will insist, send it back, we'll insist, there'll be a conference committee appointed, and hopefully we'll work out the differences in the next 24 hours or so, however long it takes while we're still in session.
Representative Smith's counterpart in the Senate says the two chambers disagree on about a dozen points, but Senator Steve Thompson warns the Senate will stand firm to ensure big business pays its fair share into the Universal Fund.
There's a $20 million cap on the amount the interruptibles, the large industries, would have to pay into the Universal Service Fund that goes to protect low-income people, some people who want to establish that are higher risk, that would like to reestablish their service, and also for expansions of distributing companies, and that's what the fund is for also. And that cap, which should be borne equally by residential customers and interruptibles, large industries, is $20 million cap in the House for on industries, whereas the consumer has had to make a lot of that up under this first deregulation process. The Senate feels very strongly that there should be more onus on the industries, at least sharing the burden so that there's equity.
And the conference committee will meet Friday to iron out the House and Senate differences. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Hamilton Northcutt for Lawmakers.
A lot of last-minute business. Thanks, Hamilton.
The fiscal year 2003 budget is on its way to Governor Barnes. This budget, which is roughly $16 billion, is $500,000 less than last year's budget due to difficult economic times. Today, both the House and the Senate passed the conference committee report on the measure. In the House, Majority Leader Larry Walker presented the spending plan. Republicans fired off immediate questions. Representative Bob Irvin wanted to know why budget conferees agreed to spend $3 million on a facility in McIntosh County the Department of Juvenile Justice said it could no longer use. Representative Walker said the facility was a big employer and could be converted for other uses, such as a rehabilitation center.
Frankly, it's an economic development thing to some extent.
Well, I'm in favor of McIntosh County, too, but isn't it true that we really are just appropriating $3 million here with no idea of what it's going to be spent for?
We do have we have some idea.
That we have the idea it's going to be spent in McIntosh County, but nothing else. We have no idea of the function that it's going to perform, do we?
I don't think I can add anything, Mr. Irvin, to what I've already said.
Representative Clint Smith also pressed Democratic leadership on the budget. He wanted to know why more money would not be set aside to fund state ethics commission positions.
How many people do they have over there? Do you know?
I'm not certain, but is it not true? I think it's probably less than 6, a half a dozen or so.
Well, you don't really know, do you?
No, but is it not true that I know from following them and watching it closely that it's obvious that they don't have enough positions to do the job in a timely manner?
You need to come talk to us next time. Give us more information about it.
Thank you.
Representative Smith also wanted to know why Democrats wanted to spend state dollars on band uniforms for certain areas when local fundraisers could cover the cost. Walker claimed the majority of members thought that band uniforms were an important purchase for schools that couldn't afford them.
Gainesville is a very nice, prosperous community. There are places in Georgia that are not like Gainesville. There are rural counties in rural counties in the state of Georgia where they have a difficult time meeting the basic needs, and they have a very hard time. And this is some legislator. I don't even know, are there band uniforms in here?
There are quite a few.
Well, there's some legislators that I think would disagree with you. They think it's important.
Ultimately, the budget was adopted as it was in the Senate, and Gerald has that story.
On the Senate side, Appropriations Chairman George Hooks pointed to additions in the big budget, including more money for the Peach Care for Kids program, which provides medical insurance for children in low-income families.
I want every member of the House, the Senate, and the state of Georgia to notice item number A, little a. That's where your cash is, ladies and gentlemen. And we put $7 million in Peach Care for Kids, cash basis, to keep that thing afloat. It's one of the most popular programs across the nation. And number 9 is probably the biggest ticket item in this entire budget. That is $2.2 million in cash for an economic development contract. That is to help locate an industry that will employ 10,000 people over in southeast Georgia.
Senator Robert Lamoot was among Republicans who opposed the way the budget is created. Following Republican speakers, Chairman Hooks defended the $16 billion spending plan. First, here's Senator Lamoot.
I become more and more and more aware of exactly how broken this system is. The fact that there is very little oversight over contracts. The fact that there are ways to move money underneath to supply what was supposed to have been a short budget year, and yet somehow we find enough money to spend $570,000 in the Majority Leader's district in special projects. We find enough money to spend $369,000 from 40 different projects in the President Pro Tem's district. And yet this is a tight budget year.
Is this not the most fiscally responsible budget in the Southeast, and as far as we can tell, the United States of America, based on expert, documented evidence?
I feel very strongly that it is a very fiscally conservative budget.
Wasn't the door open?
Very pleased to hear that total spending is down in Georgia this year, even considering inflation.
Is this budget not less than last year's?
I think that's wonderful for the taxpayers of Georgia.
The Senate voted in favor of the Conference Committee report on the budget. That vote was 34 to 15. The FY 2003 budget now heads to Governor Barnes. Many things are heading to Governor Barnes in these last days of the General Assembly, the last 2 days. You're looking now at a live picture of the House. They have been going all day. The Senate in a brief dinner break right now. The House continuing to consider bills. They're now doing, Susan, as you know, what they call agrees and disagrees.
That's simply when the House has the option of agreeing or disagreeing to a change made over in the Senate. And of course, as you know, they both have to approve the exact same measure in the exact same language, etc. So again, if they agree, then that would mean it would go on to the governor. If they choose to disagree, that would send it back to the Senate and most likely a conference committee.
And that sets up conference committees. We talk about that a lot in these final days of the General Assembly. A conference committee was appointed today to work out House and Senate differences in the Georgia Fair Lending Act. And Wandy Lawson is live at the Capitol with more about the compromises that may come out of that committee. And Wandy.
Well, aimed at regulating high-cost home loans, the governor's predatory lending bill has created a debate in both the House and the Senate. Just how much protection should borrowers be offered without infringing on the rights of lenders? Now, these are among the sticking points that need to be worked out. The House today insisted on its position regarding HB 1361, and a conference committee was appointed. In the Senate, the conferees are Don Cheeks, Vincent Fort, and Steve Thompson. And on the House side, they're Butch Parrish, Tracy Stallings, and Charlie Smith. Representative Smith told me today that a resolution to this matter hinges on about a dozen differences.
The Senate took out all of the House amendments that were added, and a number of those House amendments, you may recall, were opposed by me on behalf of the governor. The Senate also added a very lengthy section on consumer education, set up what some would call a bureaucracy of sorts, nevertheless a good, well-intentioned section. So there are a number, 10 or 15 differences between the House and Senate we need to work out.
Well, now, after the conference committee designs a compromise, the Georgia Fair Lending Act will need approval, of course, from both the House and the Senate. However, Representative Smith says he doesn't anticipate the need for much compromise. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm in Wandy Lawson for Lawmakers.
Now, Wandy, was Representative Smith able to give you a sense of when the conference committee would meet?
Well, of course, said he would look forward to meeting just as soon as possible. But with the governor's floor leaders in both the House and the Senate represented on that committee, well, that meeting will have to wait until after all of the governor's legislative items have been worked out in both the House and the Senate. So Representative Smith said if they were unable to meet tonight, they would convene early tomorrow morning. Of course, just in time to get that measure to both houses on the final days of this session.
And I'm also wondering, Nwandi, with so many changes that the House made and the Senate restoring those changes, if it'll really be that easy to come up with a compromise measure. We'll be watching. Thank you very much, Nwandi.
Also today, the House approves the governor's bill fighting identity fraud. According to proponents of this bill, identity fraud is on the rapid rise, and this bill seeks to curb it. During debate, a handful of amendments were offered, one from Representative Kathy Cox. She wanted to make it illegal to sell urine for the purpose of defrauding drug tests.
You may be aware that we have a drug-free workplace program. Over 500 companies get tax credits and tax breaks from the state of Georgia for operating their businesses as drug-free. To keep them drug-free, employees are routinely subjected to drug screening tests. And this is going on all over the country. And there has developed a market for selling urine to people so that they can use a kit to defraud the drug test. And my amendment simply will make it illegal in the state of Georgia to sell urine to defraud drug tests.
Despite Cox's pleas, House Speaker Tom Murphy ruled the amendment not germane. However, he did give the House the option of voting on it. The amendment failed in a floor vote. Representative Brian Joyce offered another amendment deleting the seizure of property section of the bill. Take a look.
Let's find another way to punish these people. I mean, they're getting punished. It's against the law. What we're having a law in here to punish folks for identity theft, give them fines, give them lengthy years in jail. But I think we should reserve asset forfeitures for very, 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 very serious crimes so that we do not foster the people's hate of our government.
The Joyce amendment also failed. The bill went on to pass. Due to House changes, the bill does go back to the Senate.
For those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org for more information. Click on Watch GPTV Online, then follow the simple instructions for watching live or looking at past Lawmakers programs in our archives. That website address again is gpb.org. Just another way we keep you apprised of what's going on here at the Georgia General Assembly.
And we'd also like to recommend another website that's a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Simply go to www.legis.state.ga.us/legis. That website is certainly a great tool that we use here at Lawmakers on a regular basis.
In other news, members of the House Judiciary Committee voted down a part of the Lieutenant Governor's legislative agenda today. Lawmakers Michelle Horton was there and has more on that story. Michelle.
Gerald, Senate Bill 427 would charge DUI offenders who had children in their car while driving under the influence with child endangerment. Several committee members at today's meeting expressed concern over how underage offenders will be dealt with under this legislation.
I think you're basically saying, and Senator, you're saying the person's a less safe driver, and as a result of their less safe driving, there's an accident, somebody's hurt, we're going to punish them. But you don't want to punish someone just because they're a per se violator, as he said, an 18-year-old with 2.02, which doesn't impair, or someone who happened to have a level of marijuana in their bloodstream, but it wasn't the reason they had the accident, they just happened to have it.
Senate Bill 427 was defeated by a vote of 7-8, effectively killing the bill for this session. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Michelle Horton for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
The Senate today passed the House bill dealing with the proper disposal of dead bodies. That legislation came in the wake of the tri-state crematory case in Walker County. The Senate amended House Bill 1481 and sent it back to the House. Senator Jeff Mullis, sponsor of the bill regulating crematories, said that all related issues would be worked out in a conference committee.
And the Senate voted again today to require voters to have photo IDs when they go to their polling places. Senator Joe Burton has been crusading for that measure for quite a while.
30 members of this body has voted for this amendment to the bill. And so I would appreciate it if you would support the bill. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's known as what's fair for one is fair for all. You know, if we want to require people to show their identification with a photograph, then I think everybody should.
The Senate voted to add the Burton Amendment on the House Elections Bill and send it back to the House. That could end up in a conference committee. Now we're going to go back to the Senate right now. They are back in session after, oh, I'm sorry, we're going back to the House now. Again, they are in the process mainly of voting on agrees and disagrees. That is where the Senate has changed a House bill. Then the House has to decide whether they can live with those changes. Now we're back in the Senate. Senator Nadine Thomas in the well. Let's listen in on the latest piece of legislation being discussed.
If there are no questions, I yield the well and I ask you to vote against all the amendments. Thank you.
We have amendments from 28 to 54.
Have the amendments been read?
It's just been turned in.
Chair recognizes the Senator of the 54th District to speak to his amendment. You recognize to speak, Senator.
Mr. President and fellow senators, you know, I have very mixed emotions about this bill, and I want to try to explain just a bit.
The bill being discussed right now in the Senate is House Bill 1492. That is an insurance bill amending provisions providing diabetes coverage. This has been fairly controversial, yet Senator Nadine Thomas, who is a nurse, has been championing that bill in the Senate. I believe it's a bill sponsored by Speaker of the House Tom Murphy and Bobby Parham of the 122nd in the House. Senator Nadine Thomas has been at odds with Senator Don Thomas, who is a doctor who has been trying to change that. So he is offering his amendment now. Let's listen in.
What concerns me is that many of us are also small employers. I employ 11 people at my office and get home and work every opportunity. But you know, I provide insurance for those 11 employees, and every time we pass a mandate, no matter how much it looks like it's needed, our insurance rates go up. And, you know, it gets to the point where you can't afford it. Then your employees are not going to be covered with insurance. And every time we pass one of these mandates, I don't remember the numbers on it, but so many people drop their insurance and then their employees are no longer covered. So for that reason, you know, it seems that, well, just one more little mandate won't make much difference. But I assure you, every one we pass makes a little more difference. And I'm still just a little undecided about how I may vote on this, to be honest with you. But I just have the belief that my amendment should stay in and that we should make it an offering rather than a mandate. So I'll leave it to you to vote the way you think you should. Thank you. Any questions?
And the Senate about ready to vote on that particular issue on the amendment to the diabetes bill. We may return to that later. Susan?
With the end of this legislative session in sight, here's an update of some key legislation and how it stands on day 39. In the area of medical care, the governor's effort to compel insurance companies to cover colorectal cancer screening was amended by the Senate. The House approved the changes, and that measure awaits the governor's signature. An effort to require insurance coverage for diabetes medication and supplies did hit a roadblock last night when the Senate failed to approve that measure, but as you just saw, they are debating that as we speak. A vote to reconsider was placed that bill on the end of today's calendar, and again, they are taking it up as you just heard. The Senate approved a plan to make insurers more responsive to their clients, and the House placed the measure on today's supplemental calendar. And in response to the Walker County crematory cleanup, several measures were introduced to regulate the crematory industry. Senate Bill 469 has cleared the Senate, but has not yet reached the House floor. The governor's bioterrorism bill generated debate from those who oppose mandatory vaccinations and quarantines. A committee substitute cleared the House, and the bill must now be approved by the Senate. opposed by those who did not want to limit the power of law enforcement officers. A measure to prevent the use of race in generating a criminal profile failed to clear the Senate Judiciary Committee. However, the governor's pledge to streamline the process of driver's license renewal made it through both houses and now awaits executive signature. An attempt to regulate the use of cell phones and other electronic devices while driving never made it out of the Senate Transportation Committee. The House and Senate have some differences about how to update the school safety code. A measure to charge those who illegally enter schools with high and aggravated misdemeanor passed the Senate by committee substitute and now must be approved by the House. For the bills that have survived thus far, we will learn of their final outcome on Friday, the final day of the 2002 legislative session.
And on a different note, the Department of Education employees cheered on Superintendent Linda Shrinko this morning as she kissed a pig for a good cause. Lawmakers' Chrissy Knight has that story.
Would you pay money to watch someone kiss a pig? The Georgia Department of Educational Employment would, and after raising over $1,300 to help fight cancer, DOE employees gathered at the Twin Towers building in Atlanta this morning to watch State School Superintendent Linda Shrinko fulfill her promise of kissing a pig.
My assistant, Sarah Abbott's father has leukemia. So when she told me that she was running to raise money to help leukemia patients, I thought it was such a good cause that I said, well, Sarah, why don't you ask the people in the Department of Education and tell them if anybody comes up with a $100 donation, I'll kiss a pig.
And to Shrinko's surprise, the DOE employees collected over $1,300 in donations. The money raised will go to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Georgia. Sarah Abbott is the DOE employee running in the marathon to help fight cancer.
It's really amazing what happens when you ask people to help you, and people are just extremely generous. And I knew that people were supportive of me and my cause before, but having something like this makes it even more special.
When asked if this was going to be an annual event, Shrinko replied,
I think one time of kissing a pig is enough in your life.
Even though the actual kiss only lasted a few seconds, the DOE employees will have a lasting image of the event for many years to come. For Lawmakers, I'm Chrissy Knight.
And coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, the Georgia General Assembly may be in recess, but we will be here to bring you updates on conference committee action and plans for the final legislative day, which is again Friday. Be sure to join us tomorrow night at 7 for Lawmakers. And for those of you with access to the internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. You can visit our website at gpb.org. Lawmakers programs are streamed live, and then they are archived on our site every night that we are on the air, so please be sure and stay tuned as Nature Scene explores the Rocky Mountain National Parks. Nature Scene is coming up next here on GPT.
For some reason, that last story reminded me of my junior prom. That's our broadcast for this, the 39th Legislative Day of the Georgia General Assembly. Thanks for joining us. I am Gerald Pryor.
And I'm Susan Hoffman. From everybody here, have a great night. We leave you with a shot of the Senate, which is probably still debating diabetes.
And they're just looking for one more excuse to raise premiums. I finally had to tell my employees, I can't provide for your family anymore. I just can't afford it. My insurance premiums this past year were $100,000. Now I could tell my folks, I'm just not going to pay your premiums anymore, and I can stick that $100,000 in my pocket.